Hey friends, this is Jennifer Terri. I'm at Philippine Travel Updates. In this video, we'll talk about money and mistakes. Yung mga pagkakamaling ito, yun yung mahal na nga yung ticket, mahal pa yung quarantine, tapos nangyari pa to sa'yo. So these mistakes cost a lot of dollars, a lot of money, not just money, time and stress. So let's avoid these mistakes and let's talk about it. So the other day I shared this on my community tab about quarantine. Where do you quarantine? This is also one of the very popular questions of travelers. So let's take this post for example. Is this true? I just got off from the phone with Pal and I was told by Pal, customer service representative, that wherever the plane lands first, that's where you will be doing your 10 days quarantine. I have a PAL ticket from San Francisco to Clark. This flight is from San Francisco to Cebu to Clark, but only a 4-hour layover in Cebu. I was told that it doesn't matter how long the layover is, I have to quarantine in Cebu. This is unreal because I've already reserved and paid for a quarantine hotel in Angeles City because I told that I would be quarantined at Clark. If I had known this before I bought the ticket, I would have went to Manila instead. So this is the mistake of a traveler whose intention, gusto niyang mag-quarantine in Clark, in Angeles City. But her flight is actually first port of entry in Cebu. So the rule has always been like this, guys. First port of entry, that's where you will quarantine. So kung saang airport po kayo unang papasok sa Pilipinas, dun po kayo magka-quarantine. It really makes you question, why don't the airlines tell you? Why would they still sell connecting flights knowing that it will not be allowed? Diba? A Filipino going home to the Philippines also shared, same to me, I'm now on 10 days quarantine here in Cebu. My hotel reservation in Manila is history, non-refundable. I hope you get your refund. So that's the thing, guys. You don't book your hotel or your quarantine hotel in your final destination if you have a layover in another Philippine airport. So in that case, with this kababayan who was traveling San Francisco to Cebu to Clark, she will have to quarantine in Cebu. So you guys book in the first port of entry. Another kababayan shared, Catherine, the same thing happened to her, and she only found out at the airport that she had to quarantine in Cebu instead of Clark. They would not let me board unless I had a hotel reservation in Cebu. I had to have a family member do a quick search for Cebu hotel so I can show proof to PAL agent. I also had someone contact the Clark Hotel and cancel for me so that I wouldn't be charged. At the end, Catherine, it costed her $85. Okay? So, again guys ha, kung saan po kayo unang airport papasok, dun po kayo magka-quarantine. However, there are special cases in which there is a layover in a Philippine airport, but you guys will not be allowed to disembark. You may be allowed to disembark, but you would have to stay in a certain area at the airport. I remember, I think 2 months ago, a kababayan shared, they had a layover in Cebu before going to Clark. So that happens. But in most cases, talagang magka-quarantine kayo sa first port of entry. If you want to make sure, if your flight is special case, I think your airline would be emailing you, letting you know that we have a layover in Cebu, however, the final destination is Clark, blah, blah, blah. If you want to make sure, you can call your airline. But guys, in most cases, kung saang airport kayo unang papasok, dyan talaga kayo magka-quarantine. First port of entry, that's where you're gonna quarantine. Next mistake that cost money. Getting tested even though it's not required. So a lot of countries in the world, before you travel to their country, you need to show negative COVID test result. Kailangan ng negative COVID test result bago makapasok sa bansa. But that rule is not applicable in the Philippines. Actually po, yung mga airports, main airports, Manila, Cebu, Clark, Subic, they don't require COVID tests before travel. You don't have to have a negative COVID test result before you can travel to these airports or land to these airports. However, kung let's say your airline or layover country requires a negative COVID test result, then you have to comply. But if you're, let's say, flying with Philippine Airlines, direct flight, no need for a negative COVID test result, guys. If you're flying to the Philippines, landing in Manila, Cebu, Clark, Subic, you're flying with PAL, it's a direct flight, you don't have to get tested before traveling to the Philippines. Or you're flying with Cebu Pacific, direct flight, no need to get tested before travel. But I know some travelers prefer, gusto nilang magpa-test to make sure na wala silang COVID. That's a very responsible thing to do. If, you have no symptoms, if it's not required, you don't have to get tested. Okay? Just make sure that your country of layover or airline does not require it. Call them, check their website. However, there are 2 airports in the Philippines that require a negative COVID test result before arrival. What airports? Lawag and Davao. So their local government unit imposed this requirement. So if you're landing in Lawag po or in Davao coming from international, you need negative COVID test result. In Lawag, that's a negative antigen or RT-PCR test result 48 hours prior to departure. In Davao, negative RT-PCR test result not 72 hours before arrival. Okay, not more than 72 hours prior to arrival in Davao. So just these 2 airports, but Manila, Clark, Cebu, Subic, they don't require. Pero still guys tanungin nyo po yung airline nyo kung naghahanap ba. Yun lang. Next mistake is, this one is a big mistake. Booking flights with multiple airlines and multiple layovers. See, these kind of flights are the cheapest. Mura talaga kapag maraming layover tapos iba't iba yung airline. Usually, third-party sites to binook. Or usually, they just go to Google and then book. So, these flights po are risky during the pandemic. Airports have their own restrictions, entry restrictions, transit restrictions, maraming restrictions sa panahon ng pandemic. This is why when you are traveling, you please know the rules of, let's say, the airline or the transit country. If you have too many layovers, ay naku po, don't book unless hindi ka sure kung tama ba itong ginagawa mo. Call the airline if you are not sure if this is allowed. Ask the question, is it self-transfer? If it's self-transfer, do you have to go outside the airport to pick up your luggage? That's a problem. You have to go through immigration. What if that country requires quarantine? Baka ma-quarantine ka pa doon. So, it's best, again, to call the airline before booking. If it's multiple airline, multiple layover flight. Let me share the experience din ng OFW.
Hindi biro ang dinanas ng OFW na si Ivy Luz Quintin sa kanyang pag-uwi sa Pilipinas. Ang nakuhang flight kasi ng kanyang employer mula Jeddah sa Saudi Arabia, daraan muna ng Ethiopia, tapos Indonesia, tapos Malaysia, bago makalapag sa Pilipinas. Maayos naman ang biyahe pa Ethiopia, pero pagdating ng Indonesia, nagkaproblema.
Na-late po yung dating ng eroplano sa Indonesia. And 8 days po ako nag-stay doon sa Indonesia. Kaya binalik din po ako dito sa Ethiopia.
Pero pagbalik sa Ethiopia, akala ni Ivy, hahanapan siya ng airline ng connecting flight para makabalik ng Pilipinas. Pero hindi na raw siya natulungan. Ngayon, wala nang pera si Ivy at pagala-gala na lang sa airport. Hindi na rin siya matulungan ng kanyang employer at agency sa Jeddah.
Yeah, and she's not the first one. Maraming OFW. Kasi, especially yung mga DH, binubook ng ticket ng employers. Yung employer gustong makatipid. Kaya bumili ng ticket na masyadong maraming layover, ilang bansa pagdadaan bago makauwi sa Pinas. Ay, naku, day. Sabihan niyo po yung employer ninyo to book as much as you can po, hanggat sa makakaya, hanggat sa makahanap siya, yung sana isang airline lang. Kahit may layover, okay lang, basta isang airline. Kapag iba-ibang airline, dun talaga yung problema. Tapos maraming layover. So, yun yung point ko, guys, na kapag marami kayong layover, if you have so many layovers, iba't ibang airline, alamin niyo po kung pwede, magtawag kayo sa airline bago niyo yan bilhin. So, that is the lesson for this video. Be vigilant. Traveling during the pandemic is not like before. You have to be responsible of your own flight. of your own travel. Even though I know, I understand things change before you can even prepare, but that's the risk you took for traveling during the pandemic. Anyone had the same experience? Anyone with tips for kababayans who will be going home soon, especially Christmas? Comment down below so we can all learn from each other. Bye!